It's been 14 long weeks since I had a crash which resulted in a ruptured spleen, and as most of you are aware, we've been counting down the days until my scan, which determines whether I can ride again or not. That scan has come and it's gone. I had it on Friday and unfortunately I didn't quite get the result that I was looking for, and I'm going to explain to you what's going on in this video. You might be a little bit confused because I'm sat here with a helmet on my bike for the first time in months. But before we go into what stage I'm at now, I'm just going to backtrack for those of you that don't know the story so far. 14 weeks ago, I had a pretty big crash which resulted in me hitting the floor super hard. I hit my head, had a fit, and I also ended up with a ruptured spleen. Now, your spleen is obviously an organ. It's in this part of your body here, and it's responsible for your immune system. It has a very large blood supply to it, making it dangerous if you cut it, because below it is enough space to bleed the entire contents of your body's blood. So in effect, if you cut your spleen, it's like you've been shot and you can in effect bleed to death. So obviously that's quite a dangerous, scary injury. I spent a week in hospital. I was under strict bed rest, which meant for the first 3 days I wasn't even allowed to sit up. I had to eat laying down, sleep. That was difficult, not the easiest week, but it meant that I didn't need to have a surgery on my spleen because the bleeding had stopped on itself. So as long as I didn't re-aggravate or reopen the wound, then it meant that I could keep my spleen. As you can imagine, this was quite a scary situation to be in, and I was warned by a lot of highly qualified people on just how dangerous the effects of my injuries could be if I didn't follow the right procedure and the right recovery, especially in the early stages whilst I was in hospital. That was a crucial stage, because if you lose your spleen, you need to have it removed because they can't stop the bleeding, then it means that you are riddled with lifelong complications instantly, because it's to do with your immune system, so you're very vulnerable to infections. It means a strict diet, it means tablets, and it's pretty, yeah, it's just kind of scary, not really a position you want to be in. So I knew that compared to other injuries I'd had, this one was really important, that the recovery, I focused on it. Not that I didn't on the others, but this one especially. When I left hospital, I was told 3 months. It's been 14 weeks. 3 months was by the calendar. So my scan was supposed to be this Friday gone. The crash was on the Saturday. So it was actually 3 months exactly if you look at the calendar. Just for the record, this video is by no stretch of imagination a rant or a criticism of the healthcare service or anything. I'm super stoked with the treatment that I've received. I feel in good hands. While I was in hospital, I was looked after, and the whole procedure or the whole process has been really good. So I just didn't want this to be mistaked by me standing here moaning, because it's absolutely the last thing I'm doing. I couldn't sing the praises enough of the people that have been looking after me. So I recently received a letter from the hospital with the date of my scan. So that in my head was the finish line, not the finish line, but it was a date to work towards. So mentally preparing for that. The letter I received last week was explaining the next stage, which was to have an ultrasound scan, like what you have when a woman is pregnant. And that was to show the extent of the damage on my spleen. But the scan was of my abdomen, and it was to be performed by a sonographer, who is a person that does the scans. It then said on the letter that I would be referred, my photos would be sent, and there'd be a separate appointment with the consultant, who's the expert, to explain the next stages or explain the extent of the injury still, whether it's there or not, whether I can ride. So straight away I did question whether on Friday I would actually find out whether I can ride or not, which was, for me, a little bit frustrating. Obviously I'm eager to get back riding. I'm not rushing the recovery by any imagination, but at the same point I was stoked to get back on the bike. We've made some light plans to go riding, and I'd already sort of, like, when I read this letter, started to put them to the back of my mind. I attended the scan. I sort of asked the receptionist what the procedure was and what happened, and she was quite vague because she said it depends on each situation, which was absolutely fine. That was brilliant, enough information. I then asked the sonographer and she was really, really, really nice and very helpful. And she said, look, what happens is the photos will be sent straight to the consultant and he will get back to you early next week, because this was a Friday afternoon. My scan was at 4:30 on a Friday, so not many people are doing work at that time, rightly so. With this being said, the sonographer, the only information she had been given was that I was having an ultrasound of my abdomen. She didn't know the injuries I'd had, she didn't know how I did it, she had no background story. It was just an appointment booked with this lady. Once I explained a little bit, she was super helpful. So once she got to my spleen, because she scanned both sides of my body on the abdomen, and once she got to my spleen and I told her that was the area that I'd damaged, she reassured me saying, look, this is, from what I can see, there's no texture on the scan, which means that there's no injuries. It looks like any injury you've had has completely healed up, but I'm not a doctor, and it's really important that you rest until you hear it from the qualified expert in that area, because her job is just to do the scan. It's not to advise people of the extent of their injuries. As you can imagine, this put me in mentally quite a funny place, because on the one hand, someone's done a scan, seen there's no injuries there. So although she's not qualified to tell me, it's like, my body's fine and I feel good. But on the other hand, I hadn't heard it from the horse's mouth, and with the risks and the complications that come with this injury, oh no, it's just started raining. We're gonna go do this video somewhere else for a minute. That's so crazy. We literally moved 100 yards and it stopped raining. So we're gonna carry on from here. Recap. So I was told by the sonographer that whatever injuries I had were healed and there was no visible damage from what she could see, but she's not qualified to tell me. So on the one hand, we'd seen my spleen, there was no cut on there, but she wasn't qualified to tell me, so I did have to rest, and that was quite hard to accept because I built my hopes up, and it feels like I'm so close because I've been told by someone that has probably examined so many spleens that there's nothing on there, but she's not the expert, and I need to hear it from the horse's mouth, because the extent of the complications are just too much to play with, I think. And this is going to be subjective. There's probably some of you sitting there watching going, that's fine, just get on with it. There's probably some of you sitting there going, no, you're doing the right thing, plan on the side of caution. At the end of the day, everyone's going to have an opinion, and it's got to come from me what I think is the best thing to do. I'm expecting to hear this week. As far as this week goes, as you can tell, the weather's pretty on and off, so it's not that motivating to get back. And we've got videos, we've got enough off the bike videos this week to see us through. So I'm in a very comfortable position where I don't need to necessarily take that risk. I've brought the baton this far, and it's how much danger I want to bring into it now and potentially risk it. The other thing, if I rode off of her word, when I was thinking about riding, when I was driving to the scan and thinking if the consultant would have told me that everything was fine, I would have been feeling really good in my head and I would have felt pretty good on the bike. But as soon as I'd sort of half been told and I thought about riding, my confidence was zero. And when you're riding with zero confidence, that's when things go wrong. So at the moment, I'm just not willing to take that risk. It's not enough of a word, but you do have to take the positives from things. And the positives are that your health has to come before anything. And the fact that she has seen my spleen and said that she can't see any visible cuts on or damage on there means that, fingers crossed, most likely it's healed and it's been a successful recovery, which is really good. And I shouldn't dwell on the fact that I can't ride too much. You've got to take, there's a positive in everything, even if it's 1%. And I think this is a bigger than 1% positive. It's just being masked a little bit by the fact that I can't get back on the bike, 'cause that's what I wanted to hear. And it's important that I listen to the whole information, not just pick out the bits that I want to hear from what she said on that day. I think if it would have been any other body part that I'd have hurt apart from an organ, like I'll give you an example. When I damaged my shoulder and I had to wait for my surgery, I could feel when it was bad, because first of all, there's no risk of a life-threatening complication or something that's going to affect your whole life. It's just going to hurt, or it might come out, and worst case you have to go have it put back in. Not ideal, but it's not life-threatening. And I had a really good feeling for this injury because I could feel when it started to ache, I could feel when it fatigued, I knew when to call it a day, I knew when to rest. I also knew when I could push and try some harder things. Unfortunately, with the spleen injury, it's either I'm sat here fine like I am now, or it's that you're bleeding, and firstly your life could be in danger, and secondly, if it's not, then you've got a long road of recovery ahead of you. So I'm just not willing to take that risk at the moment, and that's what's making me nervous, because there's lots of things with this injury that I can't particularly control, like you can with a broken leg, wrist, shoulder, or anything like that. I guess you guys are wondering where this leaves me now. So like I said a minute ago, I'm expecting to hear from the consultant this week at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But regardless of that, although I've been told that I must rest and that I should still be super careful, I've also been a couch potato for the last 14 weeks, and that's a very long time to just sit around doing absolutely nothing. I've been really good with this recovery, if I must say so myself. I've not done anything that I shouldn't do. And after being told now that my spleen does look to be healed, although that's not a cue to go and be doing backflips and stuff, I think it's a cue for me to start doing a few light exercises with my little weights, you know, build some strength back up in my shoulders. Been stretching. I had a good stretch this morning, which I couldn't do because of my abdomen. You can't really twist, so did that this morning. That felt good. And the reason I'm sat on a bicycle now with my helmet on is because over this week I'm going to start some real basic rides just on the e-bike. Nothing that's going to put my body under too much stress, nothing that's certainly going to put me at any danger, but just enough to now be able to get out and keep up here sane, because it's been pretty tough, and I want to be as ready as I can when I can come back. And I think that there is things that I can take from the other day and use them in a positive way without being a complete idiot at the same time. Unfortunately for both me and you guys watching, it's not the video that I wanted to be posting. I'd planned down, packed my bike into the van to go to the skate park after for the evening session, because the skate park's near the hospital. So we was prepared, we had the cameras, we was going to film everything and document it to you guys, and I was super prepared this week to be back on the bike and be pumping some videos out for you guys and just be back to a point where I want it to be again. But it's not ready yet, and I'm sure you guys can appreciate that. I certainly can accept it, as much as it's quite a bitter pill to swallow. You know, it's just a decision that I've made based on the information I had. Like I say, there's some people that have different opinions. Some people in my situation probably just get on a bike, send it, and nothing probably would happen. But for me, it just doesn't add up yet, and I'm happy just to take that bit extra time, get myself back on my feet properly so that I'm nice and healthy and ready to shred and continue making good videos for a very long time with a healthy body. So I don't know if you've enjoyed this video, but give it a thumbs up regardless. Leave your comments below, and I look forward to seeing you this week in garage episodes, new bike builds, because I've got all the parts of my jump bike, and then hopefully after that I'd have heard something and we might be back on the bike.